What do Falcons do? Rise up. Welcome to Rise Up Reactions, the show where we talk all things Falcons, NFL, Georgia sports, and in general, the sports news of the day. I'm your host, Dr. Lee Denning. I'm a board-certified family medicine physician practicing in the lovely state of Georgia. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the Falcons draft recap. Now, a lot of people think the Falcons overall did really well. We've got anywhere from a B- grade all the way up to an A grade, depending on who you ask. What sites you're looking at. Pro Football Focus gives us a pretty decent grade overall. I have my thoughts on it. I've already posted a raw video of the first 2 days of the draft immediately after our 82nd overall pick. Feel free to go and check that video out. But I'm going to kind of go back and really recap now that I've had a chance to look into all of these players and kind of talk a little bit more about them. So, round one. We had pick number 8 overall, and who did we take? We took Drake London, the wide receiver out of USC. Now, he was the first receiver off the board. A lot of people thought that he was either the first or second best receiver in the draft this year. He's got a big frame. He's 6'4", and he really does. He fills a need for us tremendously because we do not have a lot of help at wide receiver. And he's probably going to have some immediate fantasy value from a fantasy sports perspective as well. There's about 180 vacated targets from last year's team, and we have no idea how they're going to be redistributed or if we're even going to get that many targets again this year. But he's probably going to be in line for getting a lot of them. He's a very prototypical build receiver. The negatives here are really more about what we didn't take. We passed up on a couple of key defensive guys, some guys like Jermaine Johnson, Jordan Davis. And then we also passed up on probably the third best, and he might end up being the best tackle in the class in Charles Cross, who was immediately taken after us. Now, again, I've made it very clear that I feel like we're not going to do well this year. Not sure that the draft changed a lot about that, but, we're still building for the future. Drake is somebody that we probably need for the future, but I don't look for him to be as impactful until maybe about year 2 or 3. Hopefully he's great and he has an amazing rookie campaign, and whatever happens with the quarterback position, regardless of what we did in the draft this year, hopefully he ends up being a favorite target for years to come. Moving on. Round number 2, we actually traded up. We had pick 43. We traded our 43rd pick and our 114th pick to the New York Giants to move up to 38 overall. And we took Arnold Ebiketie. I think that's how you say it. I'm going to have to learn how to say it. An edge rusher out of Penn State. And he had a great year this past year. He's played against solid competition. He's generally had 6 sacks every season that he's played, and he feels a major need immediately. He has great moves getting around tackles, going back and watching a little bit of film. I've had a chance to go back and watch some of his highlights, and he just looks good all around as a pass rusher, and I think he's going to help out our abysmal sack rate of 18 last year and get us up to more of a league average. The only thing I would say that's negative about him, there's not really a ton. He does lack a little bit of acceleration, so he's a little slow to get around the tackle, though he does have great hands and great moves once he is engaged. And he really only had one full season in college due to either injury or other concerns that took him out of the season. So he did play a full year in his 5th year, which he had transferred to Penn State, and he was, again, a great addition to the team, played stiff competition, and I look forward to seeing him be an amazing edge rusher going forward. Moving on to pick number 58 overall. This is where I feel like we're a little bit iffy. PFF says it was a great pick. Mel Kiper says it was a great pick. I don't know how I feel about this, though. We took Troy Anderson, linebacker out of Montana State. So, positives. He was the D2 Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year. So, really great pedigree from a D2 standpoint. He's very fast. He runs a 4.42. And again, he didn't play against great competition, though. We're talking about the Big Sky in Division II football. And the other negative about him, he was a former running back, which is probably why he's so fast, and a former quarterback. Last season was his only season as a linebacker in the NFL, not the NFL, in the Big Sky. He was a standout at the Senior Bowl. He had great measurables at the Combine. He's been a surprise riser, but I don't know if I would have spent a second-round pick on him. And I'm going to talk about this in a second with our 82nd overall pick. But there were still guys on the board that would be great there. And again, I was so angry that we passed on Nakobe Dean. So angry about this. And I feel like we're going to miss out on that for years to come. Just a quick side note, Nakobe did end up going 83 overall to Philadelphia. He's going to be playing right alongside Jordan Davis, probably starting day one in that defense. Moving on, I think the most surprising pick for us, or a pick that I want to call a reach, but at the same time, we didn't spend the capital to really be a reach. Desmond Ritter, number 74 overall. We took the second quarterback off the board, and it was the latest the second quarterback has ever been taken in the NFL draft since 1996. So, he does fill a need. I don't think Mariota is the answer. Mariota is a very team-friendly option this year with only $18 million over the course of 2 years being paid out to him. So he definitely isn't hurting us from a cap perspective and has the experience. But Desmond Ritter, we didn't overspend draft capital on him. We took him 74th overall. So that was probably my favorite thing about the pick, but I was really upset at the time because, again, I do feel like there are foundational pieces that we need to be building around on the offensive and defensive line and in the defensive secondary to be good for years to come. Now, Desmond Ritter, upside could be amazing. He may end up being our starter for the next decade if he breaks out and plays well. He's a quick thinker. He has a great pocket presence. And again, he's really committed to us. I loved his interview after the fact that came out, his talk with the ownership, and he said that he wants to bring a Super Bowl to Atlanta. I love the commitment from the guy. I just have a few concerns. I still feel like we're going to be picking early next year. I don't know that our draft changed a lot. So I just don't think our stars are really changing all that much. We're going to probably end up with a top 5 pick next year. And we're going to probably need to take the best quarterback available if it's pick number 1 or 2 overall, which would be most likely C.J. Stroud. Possibly Bryce Young, but most likely C.J. Stroud. So again, we still needed offensive line help, though we did address that later on. I really wish we'd taken Dylan Parham, a guy who graduated from my alma mater, Carrollton High School, and who played really, really well for Kentucky the last few years. He was taken a few picks later. And again, we missed out on Nakobe Dean. We passed on Nakobe 4 times before he was finally taken by Philadelphia. And I don't know how I feel about that. The only negative that I can say is while Desmond had pretty high passer ratings overall, against Power 5 competition, he was only a 70.6 passer grade. So against stiffer competition, he did not look as good, even with a decent team around him. And remember, there are guys going from his team in the first, second, and third round of the draft this year as well. So, he had good talent around him, but the talent that he faced, he didn't really shine like a pro-level prospect quarterback should. So we'll see. Maybe that translates into him being great. Maybe he's not. Either way, we didn't spend a lot of capital on him, and if he's not good after a year, we may be ready to move on to the likely next best quarterback. Moving on, pick 82. We did take D'Angelo Malone. He is an edge. So again, another guy that may help us in the pass rush here. He's probably going to be a substitutional guy. He had good production in college. I believe he was the 2019 and 2021 Conference USA Defensive Player of the Year. And again, he set a school record with 34 sacks overall at his school. But at Western Kentucky, I just, again, it really bugged me that we passed on Nakobe. And that I'm a broken record in this video, but it really upset me that we passed on him. To see him taken 1 pick later, I think Nakobe, who, again, one of the top defensive players last year at a D1 level against the best competition, and just, if you watched him play, absolute leader on the field. He got passed on because of a pec injury that he didn't get fixed, and I think that's going to come back to haunt us in the end. Moving on, we did pick up a running back in the 5th round. We didn't have our 4th round pick because we moved up. But we took Tyler Algier, the BYU running back. He had a pretty good year overall. We're probably going to be rotating our backfield. If Mike Davis makes the team, we'll have him, we'll have Damian Williams, and we'll have Tyler, along with Cordarrelle Patterson to mix in periodically. I would like to see him move back to wide receiver, though, since we still need a little help there and a little depth. So he does run a 4.6 40, so not great, but not terrible either. He was a good value overall. He was a projected fourth rounder. We got him in the middle of the fifth. And really and truly, he averaged 4.4 yards per carry. He's graded 90.4 on PFF, and he is a power back, even though he's a little undersized for that role. I think he's only about 220 pounds, so he doesn't quite qualify for what the NFL considers a power back. The negatives on him: he lacks acceleration, and he had an amazing O-line at Brigham Young that made him look really good. So I'm not sure that's going to translate in the NFL, because the Falcons do not have one of the best lines. We have one of the worst lines, which I do think was made better with this next pick. Justin Shafer, offensive guard out of UGA. This man has spent most of his career in the last 3 years at left guard, which is exactly where we need to plug and play him at. I think he's a day one starter. So he has over 1,500 snaps over the last 3 years at that position. He did allow 4 sacks this past season, which is not terrible, again, compared to Jalen Mayfield, who I believe it was 11 sacks that he allowed. And that was on 869 snaps. He's a great zone blocker. The negatives: he's not really agile. He's going to be older. He turns 24 this summer, so he'll be 24 by the start of the 2022 campaign. In 2019, he did have a neck injury that caused him to miss the entire season, so there is a mild injury concern there, though he has not had an issue in the last 2 years. He did allow 13 pressures against Alabama in the SEC title game, which really affected UGA overall and was one of the reasons, not the complete reason. The lack of pressure on Bryce Young was the main reason, but it was one of the reasons that our offense couldn't get going, was his pressures that he was giving up. But again, I'm happy with him. I think he's better than Jalen Mayfield, and I can't wait to see him play. I think he starts at left guard on day one. And then our final pick, we had another pick in the 6th round, 213 overall. We took another UGA player, John Fitzpatrick, big tight end, 6'7", 262 pounds. He is not a pass catcher, which we don't need. We have Ferkser and we have Pitts catching as our receiving tight ends, but he is going to make our offensive line better. He's a true run blocking and pass blocking tight end. I can't wait to see him on the field. He is definitely going to be a certain package player, not a guy who is going to be looking to catch 40, 50 balls in the NFL. I would be surprised if that happens, but again, that's really his only downside for me, is taking him in the 6th round, that he's not a great pass catcher. But again, he's going to help us out with our line, which is where we did need to address this year. So overall thoughts: I wish we had taken Charles Cross over Drake London. I can't wait to see what London has to offer for us. I wish we had spent, again, another pick on maybe Dylan Parham in the 3rd round instead of Desmond Ritter. But I hope Desmond comes in and is the next best thing, since Russell or Dak, quarterbacks that were not taken in the 1st round that are also phenomenal to this day. I'll talk a little bit more once the season schedule comes out on May 12th about how I feel overall. It's really going to depend on where certain games fall. But overall, I think we did well in the draft. I wish we had gone a little bit different route. If it was me, I would have. But, let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you like this content, please hit the like button and consider subscribing. It's really going to help us grow. But until next time, rise up.